Hello, and welcome to today's video. In this video, we'll be diving into the inspiring journey of a girl named Hannah, who started with no confidence in her English speaking skills and worked her way to fluency step by step. If you've ever struggled with speaking English or felt like fluency was out of reach, this story is for you. Fluency in English is such a valuable skill in today's world. Whether you want to travel, get a better job, or simply connect with people from all over the globe, speaking English can open many doors. But the path to fluency isn't always easy. It takes time, dedication, and a lot of practice. Hearing real stories about others' journeys can be a huge motivator. Today, you'll learn how Hannah faced challenges, made mistakes, and kept pushing herself until she achieved her dream of speaking English fluently. So, without further ado, let's dive into Hannah's story and discover how she reached her English-speaking dream. Hi, I'm Hannah, and I want to share my journey of learning English with you. I grew up in a small town where not many people spoke English. My dream was always to travel the world, connect with people from different cultures, and maybe even get a job where I could use English. But there was one big problem. I didn't speak English fluently. At first, I didn't know where to start. I felt really self-conscious about speaking because I was afraid of making mistakes. I worried that people would laugh at me or think I was silly. I didn't have the best resources either. There were no language schools in my town, and I didn't know anyone who could practice with me. It felt like a huge mountain to climb, and I wasn't sure how to begin. But even with all these struggles, I knew I had to try. I couldn't let fear and lack of resources stop me from achieving my dream. So, I decided to start small and take it one step at a time. One day, I realized something important. I wasn't going to achieve my dreams if I didn't take control of my English learning. I had spent so much time feeling scared and stuck, thinking that I needed perfect conditions to start. But I realized that waiting for everything to be perfect would only hold me back even longer. That was the moment I decided to take action. I started by making a plan. My first goal was simple: learn the basics. I didn't aim for perfection right away, just small steps that would help me improve little by little. I began learning basic vocabulary and simple sentences. I found a list of useful phrases and words online, and I practiced them every day. At first it was slow, but each word I learned made me feel a little more confident. I also started watching videos in English. I didn't always understand everything, but I kept listening and watching. I would play a short video and repeat sentences out loud to practice pronunciation. I even started listening to English songs. I loved music, so it felt less like studying and more like something fun. I would sing along even though I didn't understand all the words. It was a great way to get used to the sound of English. Another thing I did was use language learning apps. They helped me build my vocabulary and practice speaking. It felt like I was making progress, and I didn't need a fancy classroom or a teacher. I could learn whenever I had time, which was so motivating. These small, everyday actions became the foundation for my journey toward fluency. Once I had my plan in place, I knew the next key to success was consistency. I made it a habit to practice English every single day, even if it was just for a few minutes. I couldn't expect to see progress without putting in the effort regularly. One thing that really helped was talking to myself in English. At first it felt strange, but I realized that speaking out loud, even if I was alone, was a great way to practice. I would describe my day or talk about random things, like what I saw around me or what I planned to do. It didn't matter if I wasn't using perfect grammar. What mattered was that I was practicing speaking and getting used to the flow of the language. Over time, I became more comfortable expressing myself, even if it was just to myself. Another technique I used was shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to a speaker and repeat exactly what they say. I would watch videos or listen to interviews with speakers I admired, and I'd try to imitate their pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. At first, it felt challenging, but I kept practicing. It helped me develop better pronunciation and a more natural way of speaking. Plus, I learned new expressions and vocabulary that I could use in my own conversations. Finally, I started writing a journal in English. Writing every day helped me improve my vocabulary and grammar. I wrote about my thoughts, my experiences, and even my struggles. The more I wrote, the more I noticed improvement in how I could express myself in English. Building consistency through these simple activities made a huge difference. It wasn't always easy, but sticking with it every day helped me stay motivated and see steady progress. Of course, no journey would be complete without making a few mistakes along the way, and believe me, I made plenty. There were moments when I would say something completely wrong, and it felt so embarrassing. I remember once I was trying to tell a friend about a nice place, but I accidentally said a bad place. I didn't realize until my friend gave me a confused look, and I quickly realized I'd made a mistake. It was so embarrassing, and I just wanted to hide. There were also times when I mispronounced words. For example, I had trouble with the word comfortable. For months, I kept pronouncing it as comfortable. I didn't realize I was saying it wrong until someone politely corrected me. At first, I felt embarrassed, but I quickly realized that making mistakes was part of the learning process. What I learned was that mistakes were not something to be ashamed of, but an important part of getting better. Instead of letting mistakes stop me, I started to see them as opportunities to improve. I would write down the mistake, research the correct way, and practice it until I felt confident. It was a process, and each mistake helped me get closer to fluency. One day, I had my first real experience speaking English with someone outside of my family. I was nervous, my heart was pounding, but I reminded myself of all the practice I had done. I greeted the person, and we started talking. Even though I made a few mistakes during the conversation, I didn't let them throw me off. I smiled, kept going, and corrected myself when needed. By the end of the conversation, I felt so proud of myself. That was a turning point. I realized that confidence wasn't about being perfect. It was about continuing even when things weren't perfect. From then on, I knew that making mistakes was just part of the journey. I accepted them, fixed them, and moved forward with more confidence. As I grew more confident in speaking, I realized that to really become fluent, I needed to work on expanding my skills. It wasn't just about learning more words. It was about refining my pronunciation, increasing my vocabulary, and most importantly, learning to think in English. One of the first things I focused on was pronunciation. I knew that if I wanted to sound natural, I needed to practice the sounds of English more. I spent hours listening to native speakers and mimicking the way they spoke, focusing on the rhythm and intonation. I'd listen to short videos or podcasts, pause them, and repeat what I heard. It felt challenging at first, but with time, my pronunciation started to improve. I also started recording myself and comparing my speech with the speakers I admired. This helped me notice the little things I could improve. Next, I worked on expanding my vocabulary. I didn't try to memorize long lists of words, though. Instead, I learned words in context, through conversations, books, movies, and songs. Every time I came across a new word, I'd look it up and try to use it in a sentence. Over time, this method helped me remember words much better. The most significant change came when I started to think in English. At first, I would translate from my native language into English, but this slowed me down. I learned to stop translating and instead think directly in English. I'd tell myself, "What do I want to say?" and then say it in English. This process was a little slow at first, but soon my ability to speak fluently improved. Another important step was engaging with others. I found a speaking partner who was also learning English, and we practiced together every week. We would chat about anything, our day, our hobbies, and even random topics. Having someone to speak with made a huge difference. I also joined some English-speaking groups online. These communities were so supportive and helped me gain even more confidence. Engaging with others in English gave me the chance to apply everything I had been practicing. I felt like my skills were really starting to expand. As my English skills grew, I began to realize that confidence in speaking wasn't just about having casual conversations. It also applied to more formal situations, like giving presentations or speaking in front of a group. One of the biggest challenges for me was the idea of speaking English in public. I had always felt nervous about making mistakes, especially in front of an audience. One day, I was invited to give a short presentation in English at a local event. I was excited, but also terrified. The thought of standing in front of a group and speaking in English made my stomach turn. What if I made a mistake? What if people didn't understand me? These were the thoughts that kept running through my mind. But I knew this was a huge opportunity for me to push past my fears. So, I started preparing well in advance. I wrote down what I wanted to say, and I practiced in front of a mirror. I even recorded myself and listened to it to check my pronunciation and pacing. At first, I felt awkward, but I kept practicing. The more I practiced, the more comfortable I became with the idea of speaking publicly in English. On the day of the presentation, my heart was racing as I stepped onto the stage. But I took a deep breath and began speaking. It wasn't perfect. I stumbled a little, and there were a few moments where I felt unsure. But the more I spoke, the more confident I became. The audience was kind and understanding, which helped ease my nerves. By the end of the presentation, I felt a huge sense of accomplishment. I had faced my fear and done it anyway. That experience taught me something incredibly valuable. Confidence in speaking is built through practice and action. Even if you're nervous, pushing through that fear and doing it anyway is what helps you grow. From that moment on, I became much more comfortable with public speaking, and I realized that making mistakes is not something to fear. It's just part of the process. As the months passed, something incredible started happening. I realized I was becoming fluent in English. It wasn't an overnight transformation. It was gradual, built on every small step, every practice session, and every mistake I made along the way. But there came a moment when I looked back and realized that I had reached a point where speaking English was just part of who I was. One of the first times I truly felt fluent was during a job interview. I had been applying for jobs that required English proficiency, and I was both excited and nervous when I was invited for an interview. I remember preparing for days, practicing answers to common interview questions, reviewing vocabulary, and getting used to the professional language I might need. But what surprised me the most was how calm and confident I felt during the actual interview. As the interviewer asked questions, I found myself answering naturally without pausing to translate or think about every word. I was thinking in English and expressing my thoughts clearly. There were a few moments where I had to pause and choose the right word, but overall, I felt comfortable. When the interview ended, I realized something incredible. I had just spoken in English for an entire hour without feeling overwhelmed or anxious. That was a major turning point. It was the moment I realized that fluency isn't just about knowing a lot of words or grammar. It's about feeling confident and comfortable in real situations. Another huge achievement was when I traveled abroad. Being able to navigate an entire trip, from booking flights to ordering food, asking for directions, and having casual conversations with strangers, was an experience that made me proud. I was able to engage with people in English without fear or hesitation, and that was a true test of my fluency. But perhaps the most meaningful achievement of all was the friendships I formed with people from different countries. Speaking English allowed me to connect with people I never would have met otherwise. I made lifelong friends, and through our conversations I grew even more confident in my language skills. Looking back on my journey, I can honestly say that achieving fluency wasn't just about mastering English. It was about gaining the confidence to use it in real-life situations. And every single step along the way has been worth it. Looking back on my journey to fluency, I've learned a lot along the way. If you're on the path to learning English or any new language, here are a few tips that helped me, and I believe they can help you too. 1. Stay consistent. The most important piece of advice I can give is to stay consistent. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be days when you feel like you're not making progress, but that's okay. The key is to keep practicing every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Whether it's listening to an English podcast, reading a short article, or talking to yourself, consistency is what will get you to your goal. Small steps add up to big progress over time. 2. Don't fear mistakes. When I first started, I was terrified of making mistakes. I didn't want to sound silly or be misunderstood, but over time, I learned that mistakes are part of the learning process. They don't mean failure. They're opportunities to learn. Every time you make a mistake, you're one step closer to improvement. So don't fear them. Embrace them. If you make a mistake, correct it and move on. It's all part of your growth. 3. Believe in yourself. One of the biggest challenges I faced was self-doubt. I questioned whether I would ever be able to speak fluently or whether I was good enough. But I learned that believing in yourself is essential. You are capable of learning and improving, and every bit of effort you put in is valuable. It's normal to face challenges, but don't let them stop you. Trust in the process and in your ability to succeed. Remember, learning a language is a journey. There will be ups and downs, but it's all worth it in the end. Stay patient, stay motivated, and keep pushing forward. Your dream of fluency is within reach. Looking back on my journey, I'm amazed at how far I've come. From the days when I lacked confidence and struggled to form simple sentences to the moment I realized I could speak English fluently in real-life situations, it's been a truly transformative experience. The key to my success was consistency, accepting mistakes and always believing that I could improve. If you're watching this and wondering if you can do the same, the answer is yes. You can absolutely achieve fluency, no matter where you start or how difficult it may seem at the beginning. Just like me, you can overcome your challenges, gain confidence, and reach your goals step by step. So, I encourage you to start your own English-speaking journey today. Take small steps. Practice every day. Make mistakes. Learn from them. And, most importantly, believe in yourself. The road may not always be easy, but every step you take brings you closer to your dream of fluency. If you found my story helpful and inspiring, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more tips and stories that will help you on your own English learning journey. Together, we can keep growing and achieving our language goals. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, the journey to fluency starts with that first step. Let's take it together.